This is Mark Guerrero. Welcome to East L.A. Music Stories, episode number 12. My guest today is Hank Barrio, who was a member of the Evergreen Blues in the late 60s, and that group evolved into Elijah in the early 70s. One of the best bands to come out of East L.A. And here he is. He's wearing headphones for technical reasons, but that's perfectly fine. How you doing, Hank?
I'm doing just fine. I'm hanging in there.
You look very mellow and relaxed. Were you smoking something?
Oh, no.
Anyway, Evergreen Blues made two albums in the late 60s, which we're going to get into. And Elijah did two albums in the early 70s, one of which I consider a masterpiece. It's an incredible album, which I love to this day. What I love about your bands is that it was an organic thing. Guys that went to school together, grew up together. You guys evolved together over many years, and you were so tight, so funky, very R&B, horn band. So the actual genesis of the band was several of you went to St. Alphonsus Catholic Elementary School there in East L.A., and that's where you kind of met each other and started your first band, right? Let's talk about that.
Yes, we met in grammar school, and we were the two-thirds majority at the time. We had no horns, and we were a pop band.
And name the guys. Manny.
They were Joe McSwain on bass, Sam Lombardo on drums, Steve Lawrence on farfisa, and Manny Esparza on vocals, and myself on guitar.
Now, was Steve Lawrence going to St. Alphonsus?
No, he went to Montebello. Sam Lombardo was in Montebello, and so was Steve, and me and Joe and Manny were at St. Alphonsus.
Okay, and you guys all hooked up somehow. How'd that happen?
Well, we knew Sam Lombardo, and he went to St. Alphonsus only for the first grade, and then they took him out of school and he went to Eastmont. And so when we were organizing a band in '64, I think it is '63, we needed a drummer, and our guitar player at the time, Tom Merlino, who went to Cantwell, he knew Sam. He called him up, and Sam had been playing for 6 months, and we were just learning our instruments. So Sam said, "Yeah, I'll play with you." So we had a drummer, and
so you guys started from the ground up while learning together.
Ground up learning, you name it. I was plugged into a TV at the time. You could plug into a TV, and we were just young kids and learning our acts, and the rest was history after that.
And then didn't you go to Cantwell after that? Catholic?
Well, yeah. Then we went to high school. I was in Cantwell. Joe McSwain was in Cantwell. Manny was in Cantwell. That was it. And the rest were at Montebello.
Well, I remember my band at the time was, I believe it was the Men from Sound at that point, and we played a gig with a two-thirds majority at Cantwell High School. And unfortunately, I don't have the flyer from it, but I do remember that.
We played in the cafeteria. They had the cafeteria. The Midnighters played there. We played there. You played there. A lot of people. If you played Cantwell, you played in the cafeteria.
Did you get any food with it? I don't remember that part of it. Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah. So you guys were the two-thirds majority, and you were doing some gigs, and then eventually you wound up with a horn section. How did that happen?
Well, when we were the two-thirds majority, all we could play is all the high school. We played all the high schools around Montebello, Whittier, Alhambra, as many high schools as we can, which we did play a lot. But then we got the horn section from Montebello, and that's when we changed our name. I think it was to the Evergreen Blues, and we played high schools again. And Montebello's all-night party, and played in down. We got a lot of gigs.
And that was Tom Bray and Ken Walther, right?
Yes. And Steve would play sax or the organ at the time, and so we either had three horns or two. And we fortunately got our first record deal as Evergreen Blues on Mercury Records.
I think you guys are one of the first bands out of East LA that I knew of that was with a major label. There were a lot of bands that recorded for Bob Keane, or Eddie Davis, those kind of labels, which are good independent labels. But you guys were in freaking Mercury Records in 1967, I believe it was. It was pretty.
Yeah. I think it was 67 or 68. Steve knew somebody in I forgot the name, but he wasn't a musician, but somebody from Hollywood that knew connections and got us an interview, I think got us an interview with Jim King, because he became our producer and manager. I'm not sure how we met Jim, but probably the same way you did.
That's a whole other story. But I was going to say that Steve Lawrence was a very smart and kind of hustling kind of a guy. I remember going to his house with my bass player, Rick Rosas, like in 1965 or 66, really early on. And he was very, he was a doer. He got things done and
Yes,
could hustle stuff out.
yes, he did. He was the music man, but he was a hustler and all around great guy. I miss him a lot.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. So now you're recording for Mercury, and from what you've told me before, I think that didn't they come up with the name Evergreen Blues for you or Jimmy King?
I'm not sure who came up with the name. I would think Jim King might have. I think Jim King came up with the name. Then you got the flyers, these Christmas thing, green. Anyway, I think he was the one that came up with it, and we weren't even a blues band, so we didn't like it, and people thought we were a blues band, Evergreen Blues Band, which we weren't. But we had a record deal, so we went along with it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jimmy King, and that's a whole story there. So Jimmy King was a manager and maybe a producer, but he was also a songwriter. And when he wrote songs, he used a pseudonym. He was LT Josie, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know.
I think that was his real name.
Okay.
I think Jim King was a pseudonym.
Okay.
It was.
That sounds more it makes more sense. Jimmy King sounds made up. But we recorded one of his songs, and Strange Brew, our friends, remember Strange Brew?
Yes, I do.
Ronnie Reyes, Art Sanchez.
Friends of mine, friends of ours.
Yes. And they played with us at Cantwell too on that gig, I recall. But they also recorded an LT Josie song, the same one we did. And the connection, they made an album also, I think, a Strange Brew. Were they on ABC? I believe they might have been on ABC.
I don't know.
But they were another early group to get a record deal, 67-ish, 68, maybe 68. But the way we all met or got introduced to his music was through Tommy Coe. Tommy Coe engineered your second album, and he engineered and produced my band. In the late 60s, I had a band called 1984, named after the George Orwell book. And it was Ernie Hernandez, Rick Rosas, me, and Tony Rodas, keyboard player. And we signed with MCA Cap Records, KAPP. And somehow we got Tommy Coe as our producer and manager. We loved him. Not really manager, he was our producer and engineer. And he brought us the song Three's a Crowd by LT Josie, which
we also recorded.
And Strange Brew also recorded it. So three bands recorded the same song.
And still couldn't get a hit.
Yeah, three bands. But I got
3 strikes and you're out, man.
I'll tell you a quick story, though. This is funny. It just shows you how audacious I was or whatever. You're young. So I was only like 18 years old or so. And here we're with a major label, and they say, here's a hit song by LT Josie. He was a hit songwriter, and they gave us a song, and I refused to sing it because I was a songwriter and I just wanted to record my own songs. And so when they said record Three's a Crowd, I said to my drummer Ernie, you sing it. So I let Ernie sing lead on our first big break on a major label, and he sang the shit out of it. It was great. What were you gonna say?
Good for you. It's the same thing that with us. Manny didn't want to sing it, and so Steve sang it.
Oh, that's too funny.
He even jokes on the very end. He's doing little ad libs. The funny that's how Steve is, because he didn't really want to sing it, and we were forced to play it, and so Steve sang it. That's funny that you said that.
What does that say? That we refuse? Guys in our bands refused to sing the song. But anyway, I refused, and Ernie sang it really well, and to me, it sounded like a hit. We We played the shit out of it. It was tight, well mixed and produced, and we had some great studio sax player on it, and it was awesome. Anyway, no promotion, but 30 years later, our guitar player at that point, years later, said, "Man, you dodged a bullet. What if that had been a hit? Ernie would have been lead singer in my band, and I probably wouldn't have been able to sing, But
we never played it live. We didn't want to play it live.
I don't think we did either. But all three of us recorded the same song. Okay, now tell the Midnight Confession story. So this was another LT Josie song.
Well, he asked us to play it. Actually, as far as I can remember, our horn players arranged the horn parts for the song, and we all came up with the regular playing. It's a pretty simple song, and we did the bass that he wanted. But as I remember, the horn players arranged it. And the reason I say that because when the Grassroots recorded it, Haskell, he was a famous arranger.
Jimmy Haskell, was it?
Yeah, Jimmy Haskell. He took credit of arranging the horns, and they copied it note for note. We didn't know about copyrights because you could copyright. We didn't know about writers, publishers. We didn't know about anything. We were kids.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened.
Okay, well, let me clear up the story a little bit. So you guys recorded Midnight Confessions, and it came out as a single, and it was great. And I still have the single, by the way. And after that, the Grassroots, who were already a little famous, and they were also white,
Yep.
they recorded the song, but they copied your arrangement note for note. I mean, the same bass line, the same farfisa part, the same vocal licks, literally a carbon copy of your guys' arrangement. And that was horrible. And they got a major hit with it, which they live off of to this day. They played here out in the desert about a year ago and said, the Grassroots, in my midnight confession. So the song that they're most famous for, that they've had a complete career over, was a carbon copy of your guys' arrangement. If they had done their own arrangement, that would have been different. I also found out in later years, like recently, like within the last year, that it may have been the Wrecking Crew playing on their record. Hal Blaine, Joe Osborne, those guys.
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because so many of the major bands of that time were using the top studio musicians of the day, which later was called the Wrecking Crew. Like I said, Hal Blaine on drums, Joe Osborne on bass, Larry Knechtel on piano, Don Randy on piano, Leon Russell, Glenn Campbell. All these guys were the top session guys of the day. And they played on the Byrds' first album. They played on Mr. Tambourine Man. I think Roger McGuinn was the only guy who played on the record. The Monkees used the Wrecking Crew. The later Beach Boys.
Spector used those same people.
Right.
The only difference is he used 2 drummers, 3 bass. He used multiple instruments. It was a wall of sound. Yeah.
Yeah, but the difference being this: if you're the Byrds, you're a band, and you're a drummer and a bass player, and you go on TV and you lip sync your record, but you didn't play on the record. There's a falsehood to that. Most people outside of the business didn't know that the Byrds didn't play on Mr. Tambourine Man, or the Monkees didn't play on their own records, or I think even the Association, the Grassroots, and that went on beyond the 60s. But I must say I'm very proud of us East L.A. musicians, because every one of us who ever made a major album, we played every instrument on it, whether it was Elijah, my band, El Chicano, Tierra, Los Illegals, you name it. We're really playing, and it sounds really good. So either way, they copied your arrangement, and so and had a major hit. So how did you guys feel about it at the time?
We were
pissed.
We want Mercury Records to put us on an 18-city tour, private jet, clothes, all this kind of. We didn't get any money, but they bought us clothes and da. And the thing was, while we were touring, it was #1 in Sarasota. #1 in Sarasota, Florida. It's not a big market, but it was. I still have the proof of it. But
your version wasn't #1 there.
Yes, exactly. In hindsight, now that I look at that song, we were kids. We were kids, and we weren't very good musicians, but we were a great band. We were tight. We practiced more. We practiced more than any other band ever because of our passion on music. So we weren't good musicians. If we would have been a star, it meant a big hit, and we had to come up with something out. We weren't right. We weren't writers then. You know, I think it. In hindsight, it was. I think it was good for us. We had to learn to be musicians. We had, you know.
But if you were good enough to do that, which was good enough to be a hit for them, and it's identical, I would just like the audience, if you get a chance, listen to the Evergreen Blues version of Midnight Confession, if you could find it on YouTube, and then listen to the Grassroots. It's identical. So if you guys were good enough to do that, you were good enough to have that hit, and you were good enough to have another one, even if you didn't write it.
However, all the songs on that album, none of them sounded anywhere close
As good
as that one. They were, I mean, as a band, we didn't sound very good. Now, maybe the songs weren't that good. Jimmy King wrote them all, but I don't think we did justice to songs because we weren't that. I can truthfully say we weren't that good at musicians. We were just kids learning. So it might have been a blessing in disguise, but who knows?
Hey, but it wouldn't have hurt to have that hit, and you would have made money off that hit.
Oh, we wouldn't have made any money. Jimmy made all the money, all the writers, the publishing. Even when he got all that money, and we needed equipment and we needed stuff, he wouldn't even help us out with the money. We had to have our parents sign at Cronin's Music Center to get stuff that we needed. He bought a house with a pool. He invited us over for a barbecue and everything. So we wouldn't have made any money.
Well, theoretically, as an artist, you should have been paid the artist share.
If the contract says so.
And you don't even know what the contract said.
We got screwed on the contract. We had to go to, me and the bass player weren't 21. We had to go to court because our parents, because we weren't old enough to sign the contract. So we went in front of a court, same time as Kenny Rogers in the first editions, because the girl singer wasn't 21 yet. So we went to court, and the judge looked at the contract. He was so disgusted with it. He says, "I'm not going to okay this. I want you to get a lawyer, read it, and then if you come back and you still want the contract, I'll sign it." We went back because we just wanted it. We wanted to be rock and roll star. We went back, and this judge says it's still not good. They changed a few things, but we didn't have a music lawyer. And he says, "Okay, I'll sign it." So as we signed it, we wouldn't have made a penny.
You know, truthfully, the same thing happened to me. Every contract I signed with the MCA, with A&M, well, maybe not A&M, but Ode Records, I just signed it. I didn't even have a lawyer. So it's really one-sided.
I learned on the third album how to do it, how to copyright all our songs and publish it. I created a publishing company and everything, so I did it right. Unfortunately, it didn't make any money, so I didn't get it. But I learned a lot.
But as far as the record contract, as far as royalty rate and how long you can have it, all you need a lawyer to get all that right. And how much your percentage is.
And back then, all the money was in writing and publishing. If you didn't write anything, you just got like Three Dog Night didn't write anything. They got all their money from live performances. But if you write and that's where all the money is.
But you're supposed to get a percentage as the artist. But if you're a band, you got to split it 4, 5, 6, 7 ways.
Yes.
And it's a small percentage, so it's not much.
Yes.
And then you owe the money for the recording. You're in debt to begin with.
I know for a fact, hit bands like Chicago, they broke even on their first album because to record it cost $250,000, which is like $2 million nowadays. So they didn't make any money on their first album, and the label made all the money. And it's not until the second album, if you have a second hit, you got pull, you got credibility. Now you can deal with the record company and say, "No, I want this and I want that," which is what happened to Chicago and a lot of groups like that. So
many groups, it's almost like a serfdom because a lot of groups are like always in debt. They even have hits, but especially in the video age, they're putting out these expensive videos and expensive recordings, and they're in so much debt that they have 2, 3 hits and they're still in debt to the company. And so, like you
Absolutely.
say,
Yeah.
it's just
Unfortunately. Yeah.
it's just live performances where they can
Yeah.
make money. And even then, they get ripped off by their managers sometimes.
Oh yeah. Everybody gets ripped off before you start making money, if you're lucky. If you're not, if you're a one-hit wonder, forget it. If you have talent and you're a good songwriter, you start making money, and then you start saving it for
Yeah,
your
well,
old age.
look at the Beatles. Nobody had more hits than the Beatles, but they signed a bad contract with EMI at the beginning, where they got some tiny royalty rate, like 7%, that they had to split 4 ways, and EMI kept them to that contract for the whole like 5 years. They're having tons of hits, Sergeant Pepper, and they're still getting a crappy rate until they made Apple Records in the late 60s when they broke out of that. So now we're your Evergreen Blues. Let's talk about that 18 city tour.
It was first class. It was first class. All the places we played were first class. We didn't play maybe a whole set while we're in the city. Once in a while, we'll get a TV show, and we'll just do one song. We'll lip sync one song at a TV show at a city. Only one I really remember was the Dells was on the same TV show, and they lip synced their hit. And the reason I remember that, because they had the exact same suits that we had made, and we don't understand how did they have the same suits that were made for us. As we were going, oh wow, we got Dell's suits on it, the Yale. And anyway, we felt really ooh. But and then that's why I remember that we played the Rooster Tail in Detroit, which is the big club. And we played a whole show, and it was all done really well. It was we really it didn't help our careers, but it helped our.
Now, wasn't that an African American club?
That Rooster Tail was.
Yeah, and you guys won them over. They dug you because you were funky
Yes.
enough.
Well, we were funky enough. We played R&B. We were R&B horn band, so we were right in with the black clubs and stuff.
And then you went to like New York, Florida, all over the country, right?
Yeah, yeah. I have a list of them, but it was 18 cities. It was where we almost crashed. Oh, we thought we were almost crashed in Chicago, because we were flying in this fog in this exact same plane, 18 passenger Beechcraft in the fog, and where Otis Redding crashed it was earlier, and we were all scared about it because we didn't like flying, but here we were. We had our own pilot, we own everything, but so I remember certain things like that.
And you were only, what, 17 at the time, something like that? How old are you on that first tour?
Oh, that was we were 19 and 20, I think.
Still pretty young.
Yes.
How did you wind up with the ABC records? You made a second album as the Evergreen Blues. How'd that happen?
I think Jim King got us the record deal, and on ABC, and that's when we had our first chance of writing this song. We wrote a couple of songs. They weren't very good, but they were ours. We had a song called "The Moon Is High," that Kenny wrote the lyrics. The moon is high, and so am I. I'm going to get to you tonight. Your loss will be my gain. It was a little racy, but and I played a solo like McCoy's. I remember McCoy's had.
Hang on, Sloopy.
Yeah, they had a solo, and I kind of copied Rick Derringer's. I wasn't a very good soloist, but I could copy, and I was copying that. I remember that, and we took the picture in the Ivy over there in Hollywood, across the street from the Hollywood Bowl. They had a big ivy wall, and we all sat in it, and they arranged it and took pictures.
Oh, here's the cover.
Yeah, I finally grew a mustache to my goatee. I wore a scarf. We were into scarves. You can notice our clothes was the genre at the time.
So on that second album, that's when you had Tommy Coe as an engineer.
Yes.
And recorded it at American Studios in Studio City, which was owned by Richie Podler, who produced Three Dog Night and Steppenwolf. We recorded Three's a Crowd at the same studio, American, with Tommy Coe also. So we were all kind of you know, Strange Brew, you and my group.
It was a big, studio. A lot of the hit groups recorded there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
like
funny
it
how we
too.
all wound up doing the same song in the same studio. I don't know
And
where Strange Brew did it, but
we felt, ooh, we're going to be stars.
so on that second album, you recorded a version of Try a Little Tenderness, and it was Otis Redding's version, right?
Yes, yes. Manny was a big Otis Redding. He loved Otis Redding. We did a few of his songs in live and on album. Manny was a really good R&B singer.
Absolutely. And he idolized all, especially the Stax Volt guys, the Wilson Pickett,
Oh, yeah.
those guys.
Oh, yeah. And then Al Green came along. He loved Al Green. In fact, he sounded a lot, to me, he sounded a lot like Al Green.
Great singer, man. Great singer.
There's one thing I want to point out. Our horn band, we didn't have a lot of background vocals. Our horns were arranged like background vocals. Now, Steve can sing background vocals, but he's playing horn. On the records, he can sing, and I can sing a little bit, but we didn't have a lot of background vocals. We used the horns as background vocals. So Manny was on his own, and Manny was so good, he carried us. He carried it. And he was a good performer too, dancer and all that kind of stuff too.
Great frontman, great singer. So, but this leads to another little controversial thing in that you guys recorded sort of a rock version of Try a Little Tenderness before Three Dog Night did. And there's a connection there because American Studios, Richie Podler, he produced Three Dog Night, and you guys did a live show with Three Dog Night. And tell the story about all that.
We were opening up for Three Dog Night. Somebody had enough pull, our manager or whatever, to get us on there, and it's Carlsbad. And when we were going to play there, obviously the manager of Three Dog Night knew that we recorded it because his manager asked our manager for us to tell us not to play it, tell us not to play it, not ask us. And we said yes, and we went on and played it anyway.
Yeah, baby.
and Jimmy was mad, and his wife Nancy, they were just mad at us, and we just said, "Oh well."
Good for you, man. But
we made the most money up to that time for one gig. At that time, the most money, I forgot what it was, but we had friends there. We jumped in our cars after the concert, drove to San Diego by TJ, parked our car, went across to TJ, and got a cab and went and had fun in TJ.
With all that money.
It was a big, I won't go into it, but it was a great evening.
But anyway, it's possible that Three Dog Night got the idea of doing their version of Try a Little Tenderness from you guys. You can never prove it. Very possible.
Never prove it, because a lot of people ended up doing that song. It's a great song. And
but like I said, you guys were at American Studios recording it.
They could have got it.
That's Richard Podler's studio.
It's like Grassroots heard Midnight Confessions on the radio, and their manager went up to our manager and says, "Who wrote that song?" And Jimmy says, "I did." So can we record it? Of course, Jimmy said yes, and they went. I'd say yes if I was him too. Yeah. And they went and recorded. It was their biggest hit. Yeah. Jimmy became a millionaire, at least for a short while. And
they should have come up with their own arrangement. That's another story. Anyway, that's a couple of things that you guys did that were very, very interesting. I wanted to show a little flyer here. Here's a gig. I don't know. It looks backwards to me. Hopefully it doesn't look backwards to the
audience. No, it does. It doesn't. It looks right.
Okay. So anyway.
Our name is the biggest.
I know you guys are headlining. What's up with that? So
yeah, what is up with that?
It says the Federation presents the first of its kind dig, Evergreen Blues, Strange Brew, who we just talked about, Ronnie Reyes, Euclid Avenue Express. Remember those guys?
Yeah.
They're kind of a hippie band.
Yeah.
They had a couple of African Americans in the band. 1984 was my band. Euphoria was a band that Conrad Lasano was in, later of Los Lobos.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Euphoria. And Phil's band. I don't know who Phil's band was. From 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock at the Montebello Armory.
I remember that Armory. We opened up for the Righteous Brothers one time at the Armory. A horrible sounding, horrible. It was a giant tin can. It was horrible, horrible place to play.
It was an Armory, but
yes,
it was December 27th, 1968, man, right in the hippie.
Let me write that down. December 20.
7th, 1968,
All right.
Montebello Armory. You guys headline. And then since we're showing flyers, how about this one, Hank? This was the one we did at Cal State LA.
You sent me that. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's is this
Chicano Rock.
Yeah.
Who was the headliner on that one?
Well, I don't know if there's probably El Chicano.
They should be, yeah.
You can see this on my website. Go to markguerrero.com.
Yeah.
Brownback Productions presents the first ever Chicano Rock concert, Cal State LA Stadium, September 17th, 1972. This is later. At this point, you're Elijah. 7:30 p.m., starring Cap Records, El Chicano, United Artists Records, Elijah, Capitol Records, Mark Guerrero, with the Mud Brothers, 20th Century Records, Tierra, and also starring Epic Records, Carmen Moreno. So every artist on this bill was with a major label.
Wow. And that was our United Artists. We were better musicians. We were tight. We were good then.
I was going to say that by then you had evolved into great musicians.
Yeah.
And extremely tight and extremely funky. And Manny was singing his ass up. It was.
And he had a huge natural. We all had long hair. We were hippie, and we rocked it. We were. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that.
Everybody played great that day. Everybody was really good, and it's considered historic because they're calling it the first Chicano Rock concert because there had been many, many, many Chicano shows at St. Alfonso's, dancing shows, or a theater show, East L.A. College, or whatever. But there had never been sort of a hippie Woodstock-like, on the grass, smoking grass, kind of concert. That was probably the first one.
I have a picture of us. I have a picture of us performing then. There. Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's a real good photo.
Oh, I put it on my website. Yeah, I got some too. But that was a great experience there. It was a great lineup.
It was very good.
By then you're Elijah. So let's talk about Elijah. So by the early 70s, you changed your name to Elijah. And how did you wind up with the United Artists record deal?
We met producers through Delaney Bramlett. I was friends with Delaney Bramlett.
Delaney and Bonnie.
Delaney and Bonnie. He lived in the Valley. And his friend was Doug Gilmore. And Terry Furlong was a great guitar player in a band with Mike McDonald before Mike McDonald was a star. Wow. And they both produced it. Terry Furlong was a great guitar, sounded just like Albert King before Stevie Ray Vaughan. This guy had it down. Anyway, they wanted to produce it, and so we went with. They signed us because Doug Gilmore had. Two or three other acts on United Artists, so he was able to. We had to go to United Artists place. I found out later part of the reason we got the record deal was the secretary. The secretary that worked at United Artists, she heard us, she loved us. So when she talked to the guy, whoever was in charge, said, "These guys are good. You got to sign them. You got to sign them." And that's how we got signed, because of the secretary. She loved the band, or she liked somebody in the band, or both. And we were on it. The reason it didn't hit big was because Doug Gilmore had it. They didn't get along with United Artists, and United Artists got mad and dumped all his artists. So by the time it came out, they put money into the production, the album cover and everything, but they dropped Doug Gilmore, so they dropped us. So there was no promotion. And that was unfortunate, because that was our best album.
Oh, are you kidding me? Like I said, I consider it's perfect. I mean, everything about it is perfect. And you guys wrote some great songs on it. And you did a couple of Redbone songs on it. You did Chant 13th Hour and Prehistoric Rhythm, and I love your versions. How did you get hooked up with Redbone?
Through Eddie James. Well, he was
Okay.
Eddie Olmos. He was called
Okay.
Eddie James back
Let's,
then.
okay. So
And
let's
he
talk
was
about Eddie first.
okay. He we met him through because I think through Steve, I think, because he grew up in East L.A. I forgot exact, Manny probably knows, but we got hooked up with him. Now, at the time, he was living across the street from Delaney and Bonnie, while Delaney was producing Eric Clapton's first solo album. And by the time we went down to Eddie's house, Eric had gone, but he introduced us to Delaney and Bonnie, and they would sing by the fire. It was a great. They were great gospel singers. They were great singers. But Eddie wanted to join our band. And so I think he auditioned in one of our gigs, and he was a good performer. Wasn't a great singer, but a really good performer. He had long hair and long beard, looked like Jesus Christ, and he'd sweat like crazy, do the splits on the stage and everything. But he became part of our band. So
And this was before the record deal, right? Before the United Artists.
yes, yes, it was. And then he was the one that introduced us to Jim Morris, the piano player. I just read it. That's how you asked me that yesterday, and I didn't remember. But so and he's
Jim
a great
Morris. Jim Morris played piano on the Elijah album that we're talking
play
about.
play the Wurlitzer. Great piano player, knew music good. He taught me a lot of chords. He taught me a lot about music, and he he didn't mind, and he was a good guy. But so what was the question?
Well, Eddie was playing with you guys.
Oh yeah. So that he did. He got us our first gig at the Citadel de Haiti when I was 20. He got us our first bar, and so he booked a lot of gigs. He was another hustler like Steve. He hustled gigs. He hustled everything. And
By the way, you're rocking a lot.
oh,
Okay.
I'm a rocker.
Yeah.
I'm a rocker from way back. Okay. So he was a hustler, and he hustled gigs. I think that was part of the reason why he wanted to get more money, because he was getting his gigs. But at the time, we were splitting. We always, since we were two-thirds majority, we split everything equal to every member in the band. Whenever Evergreen Blues, everybody, Elijah, and he wanted more money. So and we weren't making a ton of money, yet he wanted more money. So that's when we had to let him go, and he became a successful actor after that. He never pursued his musical.
Well, he had been. Was it before that he was in the Pacific Ocean band?
No, after.
That was after.
Yes.
Eddie James in the Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
And then he went into acting.
I learned how to. He was into dynamics, and which was great. And so we gained. I've got that from him. In fact, one night, if I could tell this story real short, we were staying in Newport Beach during the summer, and we were hallucinating at the time. And he had a big ghetto blaster, and we walked over to the beach, just me and Eddie James, walked to the beach, and he puts on Robert Johnson records. He goes, listen to Robert Johnson. Blew my mind. If you know who Robert Johnson is, he turned me on to Robert Johnson and the blues.
Crossroads.
Yeah, because I was never in a blues band, and he turned me on to. I listened to Eric, but I was into Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, and all that kind of stuff, because that's what the era. But I turned me on to that, and from that I went to go to all the old bluesers: B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, all the old bluesers. But we never played blues. We played R&B and funk and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until later that I got into blues. I'll just say my first blues band I ever played at with no rehearsal was Albert King.
Right.
And I'll leave it at that.
Get into
I'll leave it at that.
Jump ahead too quickly, but yeah, it's another great thing.
But Eddie James about the blues.
Yeah. So Eddie had some good influence on you musically, and in many ways.
He was older. He was even older than you.
Even me, huh? And I'm 2 months older than you. 2 months.
Anyway, he had a big influence. We're still friends to this day.
Yeah, great guy. So so then Elijah, you didn't get any promotion. It was a great record. It's a crime, but it's happened to many of us where we make really good records and are not promoted. It's part of the business, unfortunately. And it seems like sort of Latino bands get it a little worse than other bands as far as,
Yeah,
promotion.
we were just doing our thing, and whether it was accepted or not, was another story. We had incidents about, that was about Hispanics, and we had,
You guys were a racially mixed band, but you had at least
we
a couple,
we
2 or 3.
we faced a couple of the,
Yeah. Like when you were playing, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, down in Georgia. And well, let's get into that a little bit. We can always regress and jump around.
Even before that,
Okay.
just because of the racism.
Yeah.
We were on tour with Elijah, and we drive a van and the cart and everything. We went all over the United States, as far as we can, all the way to Texas. We went into a truck stop once. We went on a breakfast, and we walked in, and it was all these white redneck truck drivers and people, and they came and ordered, and they were all, we could see them whispering, looking at us, because we had long hair. We didn't look the part. We were long-haired hippies in Texas, and we ordered our food, and they brought us watery eggs. They didn't serve us, us very well. And I think the only reason that we didn't cause a fight or confrontation, we were a big band with horns. Dave Guerra was tall, big guys. Steve Lawrence was tall and big. Kenny tall. So we were 9 people, bunch of, so if they were going to cause a fight, it would have been, so they were mumbling and saying things as we were walking out. They were saying things at us and queer, this and all that kind of stuff. So we faced the racism. Luckily, we were a big band and we can handle ourselves as long as there's no guns involved. Yeah. But anyway, that was that was before the incident in Georgia, which somebody called our lead singer the Frito Bandito.
Right. Wasn't it somebody from Leonard Skinner?
Yes.
They were good old boys.
Yes, but they treated us. They treated us okay. But when they said that, Manny was,
not too happy.
Wasn't happy about it, But it was what it is,
So before we get to the Georgia thing, when was it that you were like the house band at the Whiskey? At what stage?
That was in the 70s.
Was that after the United Artists album?
Yes, it was during the United Artists album.
And you guys were house band. You played there all the time.
Yeah, we were a good band, and Mario, the owner, he liked us, so we were a house band. We played there a lot. We played there with Chicago, a lot of top groups and stuff, and the big stage and all that. And
they named something on the menu after you guys.
Yeah, I had that menu. I should have brought it, but I had the menu, and we were the Elijah Fries, and then there was the Buddy Miles this, and there was Chicago this, and all the groups that were played there a lot. They had for the food menu, so that was cool. That was pretty cool. And I say that. So while we were playing there, you want to go forward? So while we were playing there, Al Cooper,
legendary Al Cooper,
legendary from the Blood, Sweat and Tears.
He started the first Blood and Tears
and the Blues Project,
first album,
yeah,
Blues Project, and he also played organ on Like a Rolling Stone.
Yes, he was there
and did some touring with Bob Dylan.
He was there and liked us and wanted to talk to us. He was staying at the Hyatt Regency right down the street. So after the gig, we went to the Hyatt Regency, and he offered us do an album. He got a record deal with MCA. I'm rocking again. I'll stop rocking. He went to MCA, and they gave him a record deal called Sounds of South. So that's enough money for 4 bands. His band, which is the Blues Project, Leonard Skinner, Mose Jones, who's a really good band, and us, Elijah. And went to go to Doraville, Georgia, had a studio there. He lived there. And we'll go there and he promised at least a lot of money to record.
Now, you must add that 2 of your members did not go, Steve Lawrence.
Yeah, well, and the reason was Delaney Bramlett wanted to produce us, the last album. But we got this, Al Cooper offered us, and he's a big name and everything. We couldn't say no, so Steve Lawrence on sax and
Tom
Bray, they went and played with Delaney, because Delaney was a horn band. So we've got two players from to take our place, and they were studio guys. And their name are
Were they local Georgia guys?
no, they were from Hollywood, studio guys.
Wow.
Really good players. They help arrange a lot of the stuff. Really good guys.
And they went to Georgia with you guys.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they went with us, and they played on the album, and so we went to Georgia, and while we were there, we played the big showcase club they had there. That Leonard Skinner. We played with Leonard Skinner, Most Jones. We played at the same place. It was a great club, big
Is it
club.
called something like Richards or something like that? Richards.
Richards, yeah. Was that Georgia?
Yeah, that's what I.
Okay, it was Richards, yeah. It was the showcase place in Georgia. So while we were recording, we played there. So we record and play, and we met all the guys and all that, and they were all good. Besides the comment, they were great guys and good musicians. And it turns out when we went there, Al Cooper wanted us to do all our arrangements. When we went there, he wanted to change all our arrangements. Well, we had no say so. So he changed a lot of our arrangements against our will. And as it turns out, the reason I mentioned that, because Leonard Skinner was the only band that said no to him. We're going to do ours. We're going to do it the way we want it, or else. And Al, argued with them, but Al went along with them, and they're the big hits.
Yeah.
If we could have stood, we didn't stand our ground because we were our last ditch effort. If we couldn't make it here, we were going to go home. And people are going to get married, and we were going to have a bad. This is our last chance, and so we just went along. Leonard Skinner were just coming up, and they didn't care. They'll go back to Florida and play. Al said okay, and they became the only hit.
Yeah, and that album, it was called Fanfare, something like that. I have it here.
Yeah.
This is the album.
Yeah, the front we hated the cover. The back I liked.
Yeah, nice
photo in the back. That's a good photo.
and then,
Professional.
by the way, your classic album that should have been a hit. It's Elijah here, and it opened up.
It's a great. In fact, the album came out in Europe, and the inside was the outside. It wasn't a fold out, but they used the inside as the cover.
Mm-hmm.
The cover. Turn it turned it upside down. It was
great picture.
I wish I had a copy of it. Never had it.
So that Fanfare, was that what it's called? Fanfare? Yeah, Fanfares, Elijah Fanfares. It wasn't as good as that second album. It was, like I said, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great like that album. That album.
It wasn't horrible, yeah. And we did do songs we wanted to do, but some of them changed, and so there wasn't good. And anyway, and we did a song by Jerry Ragaboy, which he recommended. You Don't Know Nothing About Love. It was a real good song. We liked it, but it was a good album, but it wasn't as good, and it was shelved again because Al. We got an argument because he all the money he promised us, he wanted to give us. Well, I think he wanted to give us 10 grand. He goes 2 grand, and he goes, well, you could sue me if you want. We signed a contract. You can sue me, but it's going to take 7 years and lots of lawyer fees. I go, I can afford the lawyers, because he was rich, and we couldn't. And so we took the $2,000 and went home. And he came to the whiskey while we were doing a gig.
Really?
And after the gig, I got drunk. And Al Cooper was sitting in one of the booths in the back with a bunch of people. And I went up there and I started cussing him out and everything. I wanted to fight him and everything. And Dave Guerra and Kenny Vanette and 2 big guys were behind me, were going to back me up. And then Mario came and said, no, I'm like, cool it, guy. Because I was drunk and bold, and
pissed.
Of course, Al was a small little skinny guy. But anyway, he left with his girl, or people, all that, and Mario said, cool it. And I said, okay. But I
Show
was
business.
mad. I was mad.
Show business.
Yeah. Anyway,
Before we move from this period, we didn't get back to Redbone. So you said that you got hooked up to Redbone through,
through Eddie Olmos.
yeah. And then did they give you the songs to do, or did you just pick it off their albums, or what?
No, we did a concert in Fresno with Dr. Hook and his medicine band and Redbone. So we did that, and we did another one in Hollywood. We did a couple of concerts with Redbone, so we became friends and everything. No, I just like the riff. I like Lolly Vegas the way he plays, so I learned the riff, and so I started playing the riff in a rehearsal. And everybody said, "Hey, let's do it," So I was able to come up with the riff for both. They're a little bit different riff, but
Well, that chant 13th hour is that ding, 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 ding,
and the other one is it's a little bit different. It's almost the same, but it's a little bit different for prehistoric rhythm. But we ended up we liked both of them, and we came up with our arrangements with horns. I think on your podcast with Pat Vegas, he remembered us, and he says, they did great version. He goes, they took two of our hardest songs that we play, and they did good arrangement. That was that was really nice to hear that.
And frankly, I mean, and I love Redbone, but I think I prefer your version of a prehistoric rhythm. It's killer, man. I love that song.
Yeah.
With a King Kong beat.
Yeah. Well, we were into the drummer, Pete DePoe.
Pete DePoe, man.
Our drummer, Sam, was into Pete DePoe, the way he plays. And I was into Lolly Vegas, the way he plays with his hand. In fact, I have a same guitar, but different pickups on it. I copied guys that I like. So, and Lolly was hard to play. I mean, it was hard to play like him. Maggie's a hard song to play.
Oh my God.
Maggie's really
weird time signature changes and weird.
Yeah, it was a hard
measures.
I like that song, but I couldn't play it well enough to do it in the band. But the other two, and I like the Crazy Cajun Cakewalk Band, which was the name of their band before they changed it. Yes. And I love that to the day, and I learned it with the do 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 do. I love that. But so we played those two songs, and we played them in our concert. And people never heard of Redbone, thought they were originals. We said, no, these are Redbone songs. You should buy their albums. We always promoted them.
And they were on those two songs you did on that great Elijah album that we're talking about. It's classic. Speaking of your tours here, it says that Elijah, you also were on the bill with Canned Heat, Dr. Hook, Cheech and Chong, White Trash with Butch Rillera. Butch Rillera was a drummer who had played with Redbone for several years also. After
he's got an older brother, guitar player.
And Barry.
Barry's great. He's a great player. But we played with, I have the, you want me to get the poster?
Yeah. So Butch Rillera took Pete DePoe's place.
Let me get the poster. You should see this.
Okay. And what was that poster?
It's a poster. It's Chuck Berry was the headliner. Okay. And then it was with Chuck Berry, White with special guest, White Trash, and Elijah. December 6th, it doesn't say the year, it was 350, 450 at the Austin Municipal Auditorium.
It had to be like 72, 73.
Chuck Berry.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, see, it's like that. And we were a big White Trash fan. With Pete DePoe, I mean, way back before Butch got into it, got into the band.
But Butch was in White Trash at that time.
Yes. They were a great band. It was a great band. I copied.
You copied who?
Never mind.
Who'd you copy? The guitar player?
I copied licks and certain songs of certain artists inspired, like Life is a Carnival by the band. The band. I wrote My Baby Ooh around that. It's the gig, that funky little beat thing. That inspired me to do that. White Trash inspired another song, Take a Ride. Down, there, do. So there were certain licks and certain arrangements of certain groups that's what people do.
Everybody does.
Yeah, everybody does. That's how you learn. That's White Trash.
So tell me that Chuck Berry story from that show.
we were playing on New Year's, I don't know what year it is, but it was New Year's Eve in Santa Barbara, a theater, packed, New Year's Eve. And they booked Chuck Berry and Elijah. And Chuck Berry, we found out, always, he wanted $10,000 at the time, $10,000 in cash in a brown paper bag.
Up front
Before he plays. And he drives up in his limousine, he gets out, gets his guitar, and so we didn't know this, but the owner said, "Oh, you got the rhythm section's got to back him up." Oh, gee, okay. So it's easy to do that, but we thought. So we're playing with them, and we're doing the gig, and he did about 2 or 3 songs, and then the people started getting into it. Now they had the fans were backed up; they don't want them to get close to the stage. Well, the fans were into it so much, it was packed. It ran up to the stage, and the police were trying to push him back. And Chuck says, "No, let him come up." And the police wouldn't let him come up. So he just took off his guitar, put it in the case, got in his limousine, got his 10 grand in the prop paper, and drove off. and it's only about 10 o'clock. New Year's Eve is 12 o'clock. So the owner was panicking and says, "I'll pay you guys extra if you play, through to 1 o'clock." So I think he doubled our fee or something like that. And the fans went there to see Chuck Berry. So they were booing and everything. And they weren't booing us, but they were booing, But after about 2 or 3 songs, they were into it. They were drinking and their part, and they liked us anyway. But we opened up for them the set with the horns and everything. They loved us, so we were a good band. And luckily, we had enough songs because we had that was our Chuck Berry experience.
Crazy, man. Yeah.
It turns out he did a lot of. Anyway, if you read his book, it's out there.
Well, he was famous for. He didn't want to have his own band or deal with it. He would go up and sing with anybody. It could be a 12-year-old band. He doesn't care. Jump up with whoever's there and leave with the money. We
were on stage and he's doing a solo and he didn't like something in the band. And we were playing soft and he backs up and he looks, I remember he smiled. He goes, "Smile. They don't know what we're talking about." He goes, "If you don't know the part, stop playing." Telling the bass player or the keyboard, "If you don't know the parts, stop playing." And he's smiling. He goes, "Smile." And he walks up and we go, "Whoa." And he was notorious of chewing out the band if they weren't perfect, because his timing wasn't perfect. So he blames his off time to the band. He could do no wrong, right? Which is Chuck Berry. But I was kind of glad, he left. Otherwise, we would have been a whole set of good, him getting pissed off at us. And anyway, I love Chuck Berry. He's a great writer.
Questionable guy.
And his whole life was questionable. Yes. You read his biography.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wait a minute. 1 minute.
Okay. Oh, you want to talk about NRBQ?
No, I want to show you my T-shirt because I thought you'd be able to see it.
I do. I couldn't see it. We'll just say something very quickly. I love NRBQ. I mean, when they were in their prime, like in the 90s or so, and had their best lineup, nobody could rock, just pure rock and roll like they did, And man, yeah, just go to YouTube, type in NRBQ, Rocket in My Pocket. You'll see what we're talking about.
I love them.
I do too. So let's talk about Delaney and Bonnie. How you got really involved with them and you wanted to play with them.
Well, we met him through Edward James, almost. He almost lived across the street from him on Matilaha off of Woodman in the valley before, he had a nice house. It wasn't a rich place, but it was real, And when I knew who he was because I was into his music. He influenced my rhythm guitar playing. So before I even knew him, I was into his music and his guitar playing. Well, Eddie took some of the band members over to his house, and Delaney was with Bonnie, and they just sat around drinking, singing songs by the campfire. They're great together. the harmonies, and they play some gospel songs, and just it was great. That's how we met them. Well, they broke up really soon after that.
Let me ask you this question. When you met them, did they already have that big hit, Never Ending Song of Love?
Yes,
So they were pretty big commercially at the time.
yes. Delaney was a millionaire twice. But anyway, so after they broke up, which was soon after that, I became good friends with, because we used to play. He had a horn band, and Elijah had a horn band. We used to play the same clubs, a lot of the same clubs in Hollywood. We would open up for him, or or play the same bill. And so he liked us, and we loved them. And then I became friends with Delaney at his house. We bought a ranch in Sutherland, and his mother. I knew his whole family, his brother. I know him since 1972 until he passed away about 12 years ago.
Another important question I'd like to ask: when you got to know them, had they already done that tour when George Harrison and Eric Clapton went on tour with them and played in the band?
Yes.
It was after that.
Because it was after that when Delaney produced Eric Clapton's first solo album, and so that's how he knew the manager, and he knew Delaney.
Yeah.
In fact, Eric Clapton was living with Edward James across the street because he had a spare room.
Amazing. Let me add one more thing to the story, just for the people in the audience. Delaney and Bonnie were in England playing. I think it was at that famous Hyde Park, maybe an outdoor concert. And Blind Faith with Steve Winwood and Eric Clapton were playing that concert. Delaney and Bonnie played, and Eric Clapton loved them because they were so bluesy and so funky and such great singers that he quit Blind Faith and just asked them, "Hey, can I travel with you guys?" And then George Harrison, who was good friends with Eric Clapton, said, "Yeah, I'd like to come too." So Eric Clapton and George Harrison went on the road around England and maybe some other places with Eric Clapton and George Harrison playing in the band with them. Eric just loved them, and
Dave Mason.
Yeah, and left Blind Faith to hang out with him. So that tells the story of how Eric wound up with Delaney and Bonnie, and why he was at Eddie Olmos's house and around the scene after that.
And they did an album together. They did a live album with Eric, with all them while they were in London.
There's some YouTube videos, if you guys want to check it out, of Delaney and Bonnie playing with Eric Clapton and George Harrison. They're great on YouTube. So you wound up doing shows with Delaney and Bonnie?
Yeah, with Elijah. So after that, when, we didn't have no Elijah, I started playing with Delaney's band. We did the Trancas out in Malibu, and Delaney introduced me to Albert King, the guitar player. He was the godfather to Delaney's daughter, Becca, and they were in the garage. Albert King was in town, and he was going to do a blues cruise. This short story, a blues cruise, and he asked Delaney to play with him. Delaney goes, "No way, no way." So Delaney goes, "But I have one of the great blues players in Southern California named Hank Barrio." And so Delaney calls me up. He goes, "Come over here." Delaney's rehearsing in my garage for the thing, Albert King. I go, "Oh, wow." So I go all the way out there, and I go into the room to watch him rehearse. And he's got great players. He's got great players in the studio. Well, Albert King doesn't like him. He told anyway, I go, "Oh, he's not real. He was being mean." I walked out. I go, "I don't want to." I go, "No, I don't." And I got a picture of him, me and Albert and Delaney, and he signed it and all this kind of stuff. So I go home. I get a call the next day, and it's Albert King's manager saying, "He wants you to play in the band. Come over right now. He wants you to audition." I go, "Oh no." Come, yeah.
Did he hear you that night though?
No,
night?
He didn't even
just
the
on
night
Delaney's
before.
word, on
Delaney's word. So Delaney didn't want to put up with him because he could be a real to play with.
And Delaney was kind of difficult himself, right?
Well, no, both of them. So, but they were friends. As long as he doesn't play with them, these were friends, So I go over there he goes, "No, come in." So I go over there. So I'm in the room with the same band that he doesn't like. And he says, Albert King walks in. Says, "Okay, I'm going to play a solo in G." play a solo. So he play about 15 seconds, and he just stops. Okay, do a solo in C. You play another solo. I play about 20 seconds, and then he stops, puts the guitar down, and walks out. I go, what just happened? Well, he left. His manager says he loved you. So show up in Long Beach, and we're going to do a blues cruise. I go, we're not going to rehearse or not? No, just show up and play. Luckily, I'm familiar with a lot of his tunes. And so I played the blues cruise and two sets, and then I did 4 other gigs after that. And that was the first. I thought he didn't like the way I played because the guitar player, really good blues player, playing before him. He came back to meet Albert King, and Albert tells him, "Are you that white boy playing blues before us?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "That's not blues." And the guy was embarrassed, but he just said, "Oh, well, thank you very much," and walked off. I go, "Oh, if he didn't like him, he's going to hate me." So after the gig, the 2 sets, I go pack up my guitar, and I wanted to get out of there. And he's big, he's 6'2", and he stands up and walks towards me and says, "Hank Barrio, I love the way you play guitar." And shook my hand and everything. I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I love the way you play." I go, "Well, you got to excuse me." I go, "It's hard to play an Albert King song like without playing like Albert King, which is hard to do anyway." He goes, "It doesn't matter. Play like me, play like you, just play the blues, son." And I was we got along good, and so that was my first blues gig. I go, I could play blues. So
Did
then
you
I
do
got
several
into,
shows with him after that?
yeah, I did the Ventura Theater in Ventura, did Santa Monica. I did about four other gigs other than the Blues Cruise, which is the ship that goes out of the water, and you go down and you come back and come back. And the second set was all black people, relatives, 2 of his ex-wives, and they're dressed to the nines. And after the set, this older black lady comes up to me and says, "You're the guitar player, right?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I knows you're white, but you can play that thing. You sure can play that thing." I go, "Thank you, ma'am." She complimented me on playing. She goes, no. She goes, "For a white boy." She goes, "For a white boy, you sure can play that thing." And I took it. It was a compliment, and I shook her hand and everything, and that was real cool. He had his aunts there. He had 2 of his aunts, 2 of his ex-wives, he had 1 of his kids. It was just the second show was all black people dressed to the nines and all that. And Albert had fun and played and everything. And I never rehearsed or nothing. I'm just playing. Before we played, he goes, "Don't look at my hands," because I'm looking at the hands. He goes, I don't tune. I tune to F sharp 9, a weird open chord weirdness, upside down.
Yeah.
The strings are upside down and tune. So, and I gathered that. I said, "No." I go, I know. So I went for the other gigs. I went and woodshedded. But he liked the way I played before. Yeah, he wanted me to teach his band to play his songs. They're lazy and staying at a mansion in Malibu. So I went down there, and they're all just waking up. Anyway, a shorter story. There's a guitar part I didn't quite know, and the bass player picks up the guitar. He goes, "Oh, you mean this?" And I go, You're really good. He goes, "How come you're not playing guitar?" "Well, Albert likes the way you play, and I don't mind playing bass." It turns out he's the guitar player for Al Green.
Whoa.
The organ player as a kid is the son of Willie Mitchell, Al Green's producer.
Wow.
A drummer is an old guy, missing teeth. He's a heroin addict. You played with all the old vets. And at the Ventura Theater, I went to the bathroom, and he was in there. "Do you want something?" "Oh, no, thank you." He came out there and played great. Anyway, it just blew my mind. I just go, wow, I'm experiencing the real blues stuff.
Absolutely.
He introduced me to the Ventura Sold Out Theater as the next Stevie Ray Vaughan. I go, "Oh God." I go, "Albert, why'd you do that?" Anyway.
Well, he's one of the greats, man. One of the great blues guys. So, how'd you wind up with Hoyt Axton? That was the next thing for you.
Oh, I was Delaney and Bramlett got together with George Frayne, which is anyway. He got together with another artist, and they'll use half of the musicians, and I'll get half. Delaney said, "You want to play guitar?" I was a hairdresser at the time, so I had some vacation, so I went and played. And it was about a 6-week tour, making good money. And they were both alphas, and they were fighting at the Golden Bear. We had to separate them, and they were not going to play. I'll never play with you again, and all that. So then the manager says, "Look, you hired all these good musicians and everything. Let's do the North Shore Club in Reno, in Tahoe, in Reno, on the border." It goes, because it's 7 days and you make a lot of money, and give them some money and they can go home. So I'm going home after 7 days. I'm going home to be a hairdresser because it's over. And so the last night, me and the bass player got drunk, because who cares? And we're playing the guitar like surfers behind our back, and bass and all that, and we're doing the whole thing, and I'm drinking and everything. I don't sound that. I mean, I was okay, you know. And then backstage, Hoyt Axton was a big towering man. I told the bass player, I'm going to go introduce myself because I've been drinking, get bold. Before I even got to him, he goes, "Hank Barrio, right?" And he shook my hand. "I like your guitar playing." And I didn't say a word, and I just turned around and went back. He knew me because I recognized him for the Tonight Show. And the next day, I was hungover. He called me up, said, "I'm gonna pick you up, take you to the airport because you got to fly out." He took me to a Mexican restaurant. You know, I was Mexican. Ordered about 5 things and a big giant table, just the two of us. And then he goes, "I want you to play with my band." And I, like an idiot, I'm hungover. I go, "Well, I'd never listened to country music before, and I'd never played country music before and everything." And he goes, "Well, I'd like you to try out." And so he sent his plane down 2 weeks later, went down to his house, and I woodshedded all his albums. I knew the songs better than his band. They were great players. Anyway, I'm in his band. We do an album, and a month later, and I was with him 12 years.
So
right place, right time.
So here you were, like, thinking that your career was over, and then the last day this happens. Now, just again for the audience, Hoyt Axton wrote "Joy to the World." It was a big hit for Three Dog Night. Joy to the world, all the boys and girls.
Never been to Spain.
Never been to Spain. Three Dog Night.
No song.
Ringo Starr. And his mother wrote "Heartbreak Hotel."
First million seller for Elvis.
Yeah.
She introduced Colonel Parker to Elvis.
Wow. So you wound up playing with them for 10 years, meeting
12.
a lot of great, 12 years, met a lot of great country artists, toured.
All the
some
greats.
of the great people you played with and on the bill with and met on those tours.
Oh, Merle Haggard, Tabby Wynette, George Jones, Johnny Cash, who else? Jerry Lee Lewis.
Okay,
but 12 years, it was Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen and Delaney Bramlett. They're the one that joined up. I remember his real name is George Frayne, but it was Commander Cody. He was this big country star.
I remember him. So you learned how to play country. You just learned the songs and just.
I woodshed it. And I got all his albums. I listened to James Burton. I got to meet all these great luckily I've always played with musicians that were way better than me and older. And so in country it was the same way, and real country players. So I learned a lot. I just listened, you know your place, and little by little you can input for arrangements in the band. But yeah, it was great.
So you came a long way from that kid at San Alfonso's.
Yeah, I did 5 albums. Yeah, 5 albums. Long way.
Amazing. Let's see what else.
I was thinking of changing my name because it's country to Hank Barr, Hank Williams and Barr. You know, Hank Barr. I go, nah, Hank Barrio.
So after that, after the Hoyt Axton thing, you came back and kind of got out of music a little bit, got a regular job. But occasionally, wouldn't you do some? Elijah got back together again a couple of times, didn't they, just to play?
After Hoyt Axton, no, Steve was dead. Steve Lawrence or Sax died at 43 years old, and Kenny died at 50. He
was in a car accident.
Yeah. So,
yeah, but I remember you guys playing some club in the 90s, early 2000s. Most of the original members that were still around, and maybe Larry Cronin played with you guys.
Oh no! I got it. It was Joe McSwain from Elijah, Sam Lombardo, Manny, me, and Larry Cronin.
Yeah, I mean, that's
We did some, yeah, we did some gigs, Long Beach. We used to rehearse a lot at LA Sanctuary Studio. We used to rehearse there.
Little Race.
Yeah, we used to a lot. On every Sunday, we'd get together and just jam in the small little room and we jam.
Were you calling yourselves Elijah or the Evergreen Blues?
No, we never did any gigs. We were planning on it. We called ourselves the Condors.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because Sam Lombardo was in the car club called the Condors
Oh,
in high school.
okay, so that's what it was. Oh yeah, the name Elijah came from the Bible, and
Gideon's Bible
yeah,
at a
and wasn't it your keyboard player?
motel.
But it says apparently in the Bible, Elijah coming out of the sky in a flaming chariot to take the righteous back to heaven.
That's the story.
And on that great album you did for United Artists, you guys wrote a song called Elijah. Elijah needs some saving. Oh Lord, send down those ravens. Great song.
It was we were one song short, and Manny wrote it. We just wrote it really quick. We just, and I had the groove, that little funky groove. I had a groove. Because the whole song is a groove. And then Manny wrote the lyrics. So and then the horns came up. They came up to life. It was a last minute. We were one short.
Wow.
But we also did a song called "Just a Few More Days," which is from the Bible. It's a gospel thing. This is on the album. It's not one of our better songs, but we needed songs, and it's a traditional song, so we put traditional.
Yeah, let me look at these titles here. Take a Ride, Nobody's Fault, Food for My Soul, Chant 13th Hour, the Redbone song, Just a Few More Days. Side 1, that was my favorite. Mama, great song.
Yeah, Manny and
Steve Lawrence.
Yeah.
Say What You Wanna, Sam Lombardo, Manny Esparza, Hank Barrio.
It was just a funk group. It was a funk group we just came up with.
Elijah, I guess all you got credit for that one. Mean Man, Larry Cronin and Hank Barrio. And Prehistoric Rhythm, Pat Lally Vegas. Great album.
Yeah. Mama, me and Steve came up with that. It was like a Latin group, but Manny wrote the lyrics about a friend of ours who went to high school in Cantwell. And he went through a lot of that. A lot of the lyrics were based on his life at the time. He lived on the other side of the tracks in Montebello, and he had a lot of. He's dead now, but he had a lot of troubles in his life. So he wrote the lyrics about that inspired Manny to write those lyrics.
Right.
That's one of my favorites. My favorite songs are "Take a Ride," which Steve and Manny wrote, "Mama." And those are my two favorite songs. There's one more that I can't think of it right now, but
Elijah is a pretty damn good song.
Yeah, well, it turned out better than we thought. We didn't plan it. It was luck. We were better musicians then, so we were able to be spontaneous and do that kind of stuff. I just had this groove, and they go, "Oh."
So Elijah broke up around 1976, and you went on to play with Delaney and Bonnie, Albert King, Hoyt Axton for a long, long time. And meanwhile, the horn section got back together after Georgia, Tom Bray, Ken Walther, and Steve Lawrence, and they played with the Electric Flag with Buddy Miles.
Buddy Miles band.
Yeah. And then later, Tom Bray played with Neil Young. And my bass player was in the band too, the Blue Notes, Rick Rosas, wound up playing with them. And so I think it was Steve Lawrence and Tom Bray. And then Tom Bray did a tour with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, as did Rick Rosas in the early 2000s, 2004 or something. So the horn section went on to do some great things.
Yeah, they did.
They played on a couple of my recordings. In 72, I utilized the horn section for a couple of my songs, Nobody's Satisfied and Hang On, recorded at Independent Studios in 1972 when I was doing my Capitol album. And then again in 79, I used them for a couple of songs. Gotta Thank the Black Man for Your Rock and Roll, and I'll Take Rock and Roll any old time. And in both cases, they came in and came up with some great arrangements on the spot, and before you know it, we're cutting this stuff and it was perfect.
I got one thing. I just remember his name. Remember that band that was in the, where Albert King was putting them all down? Spooner Oldham
Oh,
was playing organ, B3. He wrote I'm Your Puppet. He wrote Sweet Inspiration. Him and Dan Penn wrote a lot of, he was a great guy.
he was he was one of the Swampers from Muscle Shoals.
Yeah, he played a lot of Aretha Franklin's. He just played real simple, but he had the feel and the groove. Anyway, he was the one. Albert says, he goes, who did you play with? He goes, oh, I played with Neil Young. And, oh, no wonder, he says. He didn't mention he didn't mention all the other stuff. And Spooner
he played on those Aretha Franklin records.
Spooner just laughed. He
a white dude, a white country boy.
Yeah, Spooner Oldham, and he was on the Neil Young with Richard Rosa on bass, and the Diana DeWitt, who I got her a gig with Hoyt singing background. She was singing background, and they were rehearsing for that Prairie Wind movie, and it was a movie.
It was called Heart of Gold. The documentary.
Yeah, exactly. It was, and we're taking a break from filming, and I get a call, and it's Diane, and then they go, who are you talking to? Hank Barrio. So Richard, I know Hank. And then Spooner goes, oh yeah, I play with Delaney. I play with him on Delaney. So the three of them, Diana goes, oh, you know Spooner, you know Richard.
Yeah.
So I got to talk about on the break of the movie. I go, hey, how you doing, guys?
Yes, it's a documentary. It was recorded somewhere around 2003, 2000, maybe 2005, around there. And they did it at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville.
Yes.
Live.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a great documentary. Heart of Gold, Neil Young.
I played the Grand Ole Opry 3 times with Hoyt.
Wow.
That was a great experience. You just run on stage, play one song, and run off.
Yeah.
And I got a story, a short one. All those musicians, those country musicians, they wouldn't speak to us. They're all in their dressing room. There's a bunch of tons of dressing rooms in back. And then it was time for us to go. So we go on and play. And our roadie was backstage. He says, as soon as you were playing, they all ran out of their the rooms to hear us backstage. They want to hear these California musicians. And as soon as we finished, they all ran back to the room. Well, one guy, some old vet, he comes up to me, you did a thing with like a steel. You did, oh, that's a slide. I told him, I play slide on this finger and I do, that. And he goes, yeah, I really like that, son. That was really nice. One old vet was it, but everybody else they don't want to, these Southern California pickers, because remember you were saying they get studio musicians? Yeah. Well, most of the country band groups back then, when country started being big again between 78 and 85, used studio musicians. Now we had there was one band with a great band. And then he goes, does he pay very well? Yeah, he pays real good. Yeah, I go. And then he goes, does he use you on your album? He goes, yeah. He goes, what about you? He goes, no. He goes, when we come home, they use a studio band. And they're great musicians. They use studio band and they get all the money. And Hoyt was like, who's ever playing with them on the tour, when you come off to do an album, you're going to be on the album, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So he was really nice about that. You play because you make good money on that in the studio, And he gave everybody a turn to be a leader because the leader gets more money. So he was real fair about that. But Hoyt was one of the few that used his own band. In country, they had great bands, but they didn't use them.
And going back to that thing about studio musicians, I was mentioning all the East L.A. bands that we all played our own instruments. Los Lobos also, they've always played on their own records. Just about every East L.A. group I could think of. Premiers, Blendell's, going back to the 60s, Midnighters. No.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, we were an East LA band, but we weren't an East LA band.
Right. You were, technically, Montebello is East LA. It's right on the border of the unincorporated East LA. But El Alfonso's, where you went, was the heart of East LA music circuit. Everybody.
Yes. Yeah. It was. We were part of it, but we were into. I liked a lot of the groups, but we were, we did our own things. When we did originals, but we also did songs that we loved, like the Sons of Chaplin and Electric Flag. They didn't hear. Those people, East LA, they never heard of them. So they thought that we wrote those songs because they were great songs and we had great arrangements. We said, no, they're Electric Flag. You should listen to buy those albums. We promoted the songs of what they liked. But we did, if we couldn't do original, we did other songs. So we were like original band,
Mhm. Well, you guys are kind of in your own lane, but you did play, Cantwell and Montebello Army and a lot of the circuit. Did you play some of the other places like Montebello Ballroom or Kennedy Hall
Yes,
or
yeah,
Big
yeah,
Union? Yeah, well,
yeah,
see, that's East LA, baby.
yeah. We did all that. Yeah.
But you were kind of in your own lane too on the
Well, at the
trumpet.
time too, as a horn band, doing our record all that, there was Blood, Sweat and Tears, Chicago, um, and Elijah, and then there was the Sons of Chaplain and the Electric Flag. They were all horn bands,
Right.
but they're all different. They were all different. But in East LA, they never heard of the Sons of Chaplain from San Francisco, or they know Chicago, and they know us, and they knew Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Yeah, in
But
the
they're
60s, there weren't a lot of horn bands in East LA. Like the Midnighters had a sax player, and we had
yeah,
a Barry and a tenor. But as far as a trumpet, trombone, a horn section, I think you guys are the only ones with like a horn
yeah.
section.
We copied the Midnighters. We were their bass player Jimmy
They had a
Espinoza.
trombone player too.
Yeah, their Jimmy Espinoza was their bass player. It
Mhm.
was the cousin of Joe McSwain,
Oh, okay.
our bass player. In fact, when we were learning our instruments, we told Joe, go borrow one of your cousin's bass, and he couldn't play bass at that. We were learning together,
Right.
but we were into
Oh,
the.
yeah. The Midnighters had I think Romeo Prado played
Oh yeah, Romeo, yeah,
trombone and Larry Rendon played sax,
Rendon,
but
yeah,
they didn't have a trumpet like a full horn section like you guys had.
yeah, yeah. We had yeah, we were fortunate to get a trombone, sax, and trumpet, and they played really good together. They knew each other when they're playing. You go, oh no, you play the third, you play this. They play different parts and whatever it blends of the key of the song and whatever they blend. They played together in a dance band in Montebello, so they knew each other. And boy, they were quick, and they were great together. They weren't great hard players, but as a section, they're really good.
Oh, God, great. Yeah. So, yeah, one of the other reasons you guys kind of went in your own lane was you did get signed by a major very early. So that kind of took you to Hollywood and away from the East
We had
Side circuit.
four record deals in 2.5 years. It was like easy to get a record deal back then.
Well, like you said, especially in 67, and there was a lot of money thrown around, although you didn't
Yes.
get it. If they put you on tour, later it was hard to get on tours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, our first record deal was 68, and the last one was MCA was 70.
Three, I think.
Yeah. So we had 3 record deals. We were fortunate, lucky, right place, right time.
3 record deals, 4 albums.
Yes.
So, my next guest, episode 13, is going to be Tom Bray, the trumpet player from Elijah. So we're going to get his side of the story about Elijah, but then them with the Electric Flag and Neil Young, and
Yes.
hear
Yes.
that part of the story. Great story, Elijah. Great band.
So was yours.
Thank you.
Well, we're from the same era,
That's right.
same neighborhood, same neighborhood.
But I'm 2 months older than you.
Hey, like I said, I've always played with musicians older than me and better.
Yeah, right. Cool, man. So is there anything else you want to mention that we haven't covered?
Let's see.
Well, you wound up working
Oh,
for
I want
Disneyland.
2 things. I finally found them. The sax player and trumpet player that went to Georgia with us, because Steve and Tom were playing with Delaney, was Don Roberts on sax and Stu Blumberg on trumpet.
Okay.
Really good. Don Roberts was in those jazz guys, and he's good, really good jazz player. But they played within our style, and they were great guys. And those are the 2 guys. I couldn't remember. I wanted to mention those 2 names. Anyway,
Yeah, once you got off the road and kind of got out of music, you wound up getting a very nice job with Disney, which was very cool.
yeah, I was a hairdresser for 4.5 years, and I worked for Disney for 13 years. So I had I saw the writing on the wall. I wasn't a great musician. I couldn't get in the country band. You got to know how to play steel, mandolin. You got to be able to sing. I was good, but I wasn't good enough to do that. So I knew that. So I went to computer school. I went to hairdressing school, and I had careers in that, and it paid off. And I paid off, and I got the pensions, and it was good that I did it. The computer was the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. It was a 6 months class. It was a 2-year college and crammed into 6 months. And I almost failed it in the first. It was hard, but I got out of there, and I got my foot in the door, knowing some people. Once I got my foot in the door, I worked my butt off, working 60 hours a week, and it all paid off, and life's good. And I never stopped playing music for 53 years until COVID.
Oh, that's right. Then you played with that blues band. You made some recordings.
No, I did that before the stroke. I played 18 years with the blues band, Little Kristen and Night Callers. We did old style blues, and I was able to. We had a lot of club. It was good blues band.
But didn't you play even after that, like while you were playing Disney or after? Didn't you still do some recording?
Yeah, I did. I recorded or played with somebody for 53 years until I had that stroke, and then COVID came. So I didn't play music for 2 years, and so I've been back to the last year. I've been playing a Zoom. That's all. That was the only thing that was happening, which I learned a lot playing acoustic guitar.
Well, luckily that stroke you recovered fully.
Yeah, luckily for that. Yeah, and then I still do. In fact, I'm doing Zoom on Saturday with Mark Dawson up in La Cañada. I'm doing the Never Ending Song of Love by Delaney on ukulele.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so that's this Saturday. But I did about 30 songs in the past 7 or 8 months.
There you go. So speaking of Delaney, George Harrison gave him the famous Telecaster, right?
Well, the short story was remember we were going to come play with the band because Eric Clapton. It was Eric Clapton's, and so Delaney. They were on a bus tour over there in England. So George said, "Can I play with you?" Yeah. George goes, "Well, what do you want me to play?" Because he had Eric already, and he had him. He goes, "Well, here's a Coricidin bottle. Play the slide parts on my records." And he learned how to play slide.
That time that started him on slide.
The great thing is he played in regular tuning, and he plays harmony to himself. That's his George Harrison style, that harmony. Well, that's what I do. I play slide on the regular tuning. I learn how to play blues by turning the high E down to a D for the last 4 strings are like an open chord, or regular tuning, and then I play harmony and all that kind of stuff. So George, between Duane Allman and George Harrison, that's what inspired me to play. But so George gave Delaney his solid rosewood Telecaster that they only made 12 of them, and George had number 2 serial number.
Did he give it to Delaney right after that tour?
Yeah, gave it to him after the movie. Remember they did the movie.
Let It Be at the time. Let It Be.
Yeah, that
was it. The guitar that he played on that movie?
Yes, that's what George played on.
Yeah. So isn't it true? I recall that at some point Delaney sold that guitar and was able to buy a ranch with it or something like that.
Well, there was never any Beatle equipment for sale, never. And Delaney needed the money at the time, and so he gave it to Christie's auction. So you got to give Christie a part. That guy that gave it there. Anyway, it sold for $450,000, and then after all the cut that everybody took, Christie's and everything, he got $275,000, and he paid off his ranch and gave his brother some money, and he put the rest in the bank. He needed it. He needed it because he has a ranch. He had a ranch up there, really nice. Had a recording studio and everything. But I played that guitar. In fact, one time my strap telly was getting fixed, and Delaney goes, "Well, borrow one of mine. Here, take this brown one." I go, he was going to lend me that to take. I told him, "No way. I'm not going to be responsible." In fact, Fender verified it and said, "Lock it up." He bought a big old, like the size of a refrigerator safe and locked that and a 63 a Stratocaster that Dwayne Allman gave him. And he put them two in and then locked them. And he kept them till he needed to sell them, you know, and anyway, that was, I got to play that. We went to Fender and played, and he let me play that. So I got to play it. And so I got to handle it and touch it and feel it and everything.
Yeah. Interesting.
Cool.
Speaking of slide guitar, you know, George Harrison never played slide in the Beatles ever. He wasn't playing slide. He got into it with Delaney.
Well, his
solo career, that was one of his signature things.
Yeah, well, Delaney inspired him to do it. George said that. Delaney inspired it. And then I figured out some stuff, and it's regular tuning. So I don't want to do the open tuning. So I know how to play my guitar good now. So when I play slide, I know where to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can be melodic on it, and the rest is history.
And like you too, you played slide after Elijah, right?
Yeah, I was the first to play a slide and fiddle. I did the last album with Hoyt. I did a solo. It was called Mr. Winchester's Gun. It's on the Spin in the Wheel album. And I did a slide solo, and then I gave it to the fiddle player and to learn it. He was mad because Hoyt wanted my idea rather than his. And he did a harmony. And there's no country music with slide and fiddle harmony. I don't know now, but when I did it, there was never been done. So I like doing something that's never been done in country music, and Hoyt loved it. Anyway, I appreciate the conversation. I think we had a 2-hour conversation. Last night was about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we didn't run out of stories or things.
I think we talked on the phone about an hour. Then we went on Zoom and talked another 2 hours on Zoom.
We were a long time. You know, we have a lot in common. And,
yes.
That's very cool.
A lot of history in common. But
anyway.
Matt, but thanks for doing it, man. Appreciate it, and it's going to be a really good show.
I'll look forward to it. Unlike Ray, I'll watch it. Ray said he's going to watch it.
Speaking of Little Ray, I did an episode with him very recently. A great singer from the '60s in East L.A., and he's still a great singer, great R&B singer. You're playing with him now.
Yeah. He's going to want me to do this new project he's doing. You know, he doesn't want to do a lot of gigs anymore. I go, what? That's fine. I go, but he wants me to do. He wants the band to play live performances. He's setting it up to do live with cameras and lights to do live performances. He says you guys are good enough to do that.
So small world. All these years later, playing with Little Ray.
I said I'd love to do it. I thought he was just going to thank me for the gigs and he was going to do something else, but no, he wants to do it. So I'm fortunate. But I could use the time off too, because I have other projects that I might be doing and stuff. And anyway.
Yeah, man.
I want to play with you someday.
Let's do it, man. We got to get together, man. It's been a long time.
I don't even have to know your songs to be able to play with you.
That's right.
Because I listen, like you.
That's right. We're veterans. We know.
We're veterans, yeah.
Yeah, we got to do it, man. And you're living where now? Glendale? What? You're living in Glendale?
I live in Glendale, yeah.
Yeah.
But one of these days I could come down and,
man.
You know, maybe sit in with you and a couple of songs and just
that'll be great.
Have some fun.
Come to the house, we'll go to lunch, take you to a Mexican restaurant.
You're going to like it so much, you're going to say, no, play more songs with me.
There you go. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will.
And on that note.
Yeah, man. NRBQ, baby. Okay, man. Thanks a lot, man. I'll see you soon.
All right. You take care. Be safe.